Good morning, everyone. This is Jeffy Kennedy, also writing as Jennifer K. Lambert, author of epic fantasy romance. I am here with my first cup of coffee. Today is an adorable little green and gold antique china cup. It's so pretty. Thank you, Nephew Brett. Today is, say it with me, people, it is Friday. Woohoo! April 17th. So, past the Ides of April. Yesterday was my anniversary with my very first boyfriend. We went out for the Sadie Hawkins dance. Yes, I did invite him on April 16th. Lo, these many years ago. Let's see, what year would that have been? That would have been 1983. So let's see. I sent him a happy anniversary and he was pleased, but we didn't do years. So let's see, 93, 03, 13, 23. So 43 years ago. And it's nice that we still talk. So what else? It seems like there's other anniversaries going on in this month, but I can't think of what they are now. I had a funny conversation with a long-term author friend of mine. I feel like I've been, I don't know, maybe deliberately, not deliberately, connecting more with some of my longtime author friends. We've been in this business a long time. Uh, One person that I have reconnected with, that I'm happy to reconnect with, and I'd like to give a shout out to, is Piper Drake. I have known Piper since she was writing as PJ Schneider, I think, back in the early Karina days for both of us. What was that, early 2010s? Uh, and I think she's been very open with this on social media. But in case you did not know, she has stage 4 cancer, which sucks mightily, and is looking at about a year left. So she's spending that time writing, which is what I think we would all choose to do. So, but yeah, she's feeling a little bit of lack of community. There is this thing. I don't know if you all are aware of it. I've seen it happen. I saw it happen with my dad, my stepdad, Leo. I've seen it happen with, well, my second stepdad, Dave. I've seen it happen with David, that when people get a chronic disease and they are no longer the healthy and vital person, there are people who stop being friends with them. And it's incredibly painful. Stepdad Leo, one of his, like, I don't know, men, right? Straight cis white men, um, you know, they were as close as that type of person is. They were tennis buddies. They were at social events together a lot. They spent a great deal of time together. And yeah, we're, I don't know, as close as straight cis het white men are. I guess I don't need to have both straight and het in there. Did I mention straight? Um, and this guy stopped seeing him, just didn't come see him anymore. No time. Like he came and saw him once and then never again. Leo had PSP, progressive supranuclear palsy. So anyway, it's, I think, hard for some people to be friends with someone who is dying in front of them, and yet this is part of life. Death is as much a part of life as anything, right? So I didn't mean to make this be sad. But anyway, if you know Piper, reach out to her because I think she's appreciating it. But it was funny in part with Piper because we invited her to one of my author chats so that she could have some fellowship with us. And I had said to her, I've always thought of you as PJ from back in the day. Which do you prefer? And she said that she prefers Piper now. And she said, you've known me for a long time, Jeffy. It's like, yeah. So, another exchange I had with an author friend this week, I thought that this is funny. Um, about this thing about like there being one story brain or maybe one story in the world. One of my friends has written an adult fantasy romance. And um, let's see, can I talk about it? Yeah, I can talk about this. Okay. Yeah. It's Lexi Ryan. Hi, Lexi. If you're listening, she sometimes listens. She told me that she finds listening to this podcast soothing, which I love that. I love that. I want to be a soothing voice in the world. I don't know why I'm soothing if I when I go on my various rants, but I'll take it. Um, so at any rate, uh, Lexi has written this adult fantasy romance. She's written some YA romantasy, but this is an adult one called Night Tide. And she sent it to me asking me if I would be willing to give it a blurb. And Lexi is one of the nicest people on the entire planet. I remember when she won the Rita Award for one of her contemporary romances. Uh, and she just was crying. She was like crying nonstop. She's clutching her Rita Award and crying. And we were at the after party, and I said, "Are you just going to cry all night?" And she just nodded and sobbed. Um, it meant so much to her. I'm really sorry that that award is gone. I know that it was really problematic, and I just wish we could have cleaned it up because now we don't have a romance award like that, and that was so huge. To there's my Rita over my shoulder. It meant so much to me. It meant so much to Lexi. Anyway, um, have your peers acknowledge what you've done is always an amazing thing. So Lexi sent me Night Tide. She sent me this incredibly humble email because she's an incredibly humble person. It's like she doesn't know she's a New York Times bestselling author. And she said, "I hate to ask, but would you mind, because it's my first adult romantasy, and would you take a look?" And this is always a dicey thing because also, I love her. She's my friend. But, like, what if I hate the book? So we always do like, if you're too busy, no big deal. Sometimes people just get busy. um, so anyway, I have started reading it. I love it. It is so good. It is so good, people. You will love this book. So I'm supposed to get her a quote, a blurby thing by the end of April, which will be no problem because I'm almost done reading it. But here's the funny part. And I had sent Lexi an email a couple days ago about this. First of all, reassuring her that I do love it and will be sending her a quote. And because I know how that is when you're kind of on tenterhooks, it's like, do they hate it? Or are they really too busy? Because both things can be true. So I mentioned, I think I've talked on, longtime listeners will know that earlier this year, my editor at Tor asked me to send pitches for new story ideas for my option. For those who don't know, when you sign a book contract, my contract with Tor was for 2 books, and then they have an option for the next book in the series, for example. And I lost my train of thought. So it'd be like for the next book in that world or in that exact genre, that they get the option to look at it. And this can be a more or less formal thing, depending on how the book is done. But so Allie Fisher at Tor, my lovely editor, and assistant editor Diana Vega, who is equally delightful, asked me for a pitch for Never the Roses Book 3 and then a new story idea. So I came up with 8 different pitches for things that I would be interested in writing. And I was super excited because um, I was excited that they wanted to hear about a new story idea from me. Um, and I have very exciting news. If I whisper it, I'm not. It's not inked yet, so I can't announce publicly. But I got very exciting news this week. Bum, 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 bum. And I will tell you as soon as I can. So anyway, um, of these 8 story ideas, Allie picked one. I think Deanna was in on the picking. And we had a call and we discussed both what Never the Roses Book 3 would look like and about this story idea. And they asked me to flesh both out for them a bit more based on our conversation. That's all I can say right now. Anyway, um, sorry, I really don't want to be a tease, but I feel like I can't say yet. But the funny and relevant part of this story is that one of the ideas that fortunately they did not pick is has some very um, elemental overlap with Lexi's book. Um, to the point that I was like, oh, I'm glad they didn't pick that story because I would have had to like rethink with having read Night Tide. It's probably not that much overlap, but it was close enough that I sent Lexi my pitch and said, check this out. And she thought it was funny. But we were talking about this syndrome that, things are, um, that we see happen a lot is that uh, there's 2 sides to this. One is there's only so many story ideas, especially given the tropes and fantasy underpinnings and things that we find interesting about um, romantasy and fantasy romance. Uh, that there are things I absolutely recognized. That's not what I want to say. Sorry, I do have book brain. I've been working hard on the book, on Blade's books and the Bandit. Um, yeah, there's just like certain story elements that are going to turn up, right? And every once in a while somebody has a fit about it. And I knew that Lexi would not be bothered. So we were talking about the fact that there's like only, that there's certain elements of ideas that are going to go around, but also that if you give 2 different writers or 27 different writers the exact same story prompt, you're going to get wildly varying stories. So like even if I had been going ahead with my idea, it would have gone in a very different direction than hers. And she was telling me that she saw an anthology where somebody wrote the actual copy, what I'm calling, like my pitch is kind of like the back cover copy, and that everybody wrote stories from that. And you got wildly different stories. And that's where author voice comes in. It comes from you. You're always going to tell a different kind of story, especially if you're not using generative AI, which can only copy what other people have done. Then you might not get that creative variation. So I find that interesting, though, that we both had kind of a similar basic premise for who the heroine is, what her origin story is. That was very, very similar there. And it's clearly a great idea. And she's so wonderful. She's like, I hope you get to write this someday. And I was like, oh, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I was I'm amused when that happens. And Elizabeth Gilbert, who is she's kind of gone down the crazy train, hasn't she? Maybe she's always been a little bit, but things have gotten stranger with her lately. Uh she wrote in, I think it was in Big Magic something like that. It's a book about writing and creativity, which a lot of people love, and I see it recommended. And I know I did a full breakdown of it on the podcast a while back. You could probably find it if you search for it. But I did not love this book, not like other people do. I thought there was a fair amount of BS in the book. I didn't agree with her on a lot of the things. And one of the things she talks about is this whole idea of like being gifted story ideas from the heavens or what have you, and that if you don't write it, that it'll come to you and it'll linger for a while, and if you don't use it, if you don't write it, then it'll go find someone else to write it. And she was talking about how she had had this story idea that she kept not getting to. I don't remember for whatever reason. And then Anne Patchett wrote a book that was like this idea, because she said eventually the idea had stopped bothering her. It went away. She didn't have it anymore. And then she fully believes that it went and found Anne Patchett, who then wrote it. Um, and that was a State of Wonder was Ann Patchett's book, which is not my favorite Ann Patchett book, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, I think I really differ from Elizabeth on this, in that I think she sees these as like these unique story ideas that are really potent. And I do think that stories, I mean, obviously, Never the Roses fell on me from out of the sky and made me write it. And I do think that that happens. But I think the feeling that these stories are somehow unique, and that they, if you don't write it, then it goes to someone else and they get the story. Um, I think probably what would have been much more likely is that um, Elizabeth Gilbert would have written her version of this idea, and Anne Patchett would have written her version, and they would have been incredibly different books, because they're very different writers and they're different human beings. Um, I don't think it would have seemed like overlap at all. I think that this kind of overlap happens a lot, um, because only so many stories out in the world, but also, um, yeah, I do think that there are certain things. I think there's a reason Lexi and I were both thinking of this particular foundational premise. And who knows? It may never come up for me to write it, because I'm going to write something else. That was not the idea that they picked, which tells you a lot right there. So other than that, I've been working hard on Blade's books and the Bandit, trying to work hard on it anyway. I have been having a difficult time getting my attention on this book, and I'm having to do things like use Freedom for PC so I don't go online while I'm writing. And my habits have fallen apart. I was complaining to my therapist, have I mentioned I'm in therapy, uh, that it's all this self-care shit. Because like I got in this habit of, like lingering in bed in the morning. I wake up early, but I linger in bed and I read. And it was this whole, oh, be kind to yourself and self-care. And that's like, but I have to get work done. Um, but she pointed out very gently, she is delightful. She's like, well, you needed to do those things. That was something that you needed to do for a while there. And now maybe it's time for you to, um, you know, be a little bit tougher on yourself so you can get the work done that you need to. And I think that's right. So, enough of that self-care shit. No, I'm still doing it. She was saying that I need to, her big thing is that I need to do things for me that are fun, that make me happy. So I'm working on that. Speaking of which, Kelly Robson is coming to visit. She'll be here Sunday. So we will have fun. I'll see if she wants to do the podcast with me on Tuesday. And then I will be at a Polycon for Friday. So no podcast on Friday. But maybe a Kelly podcast on Tuesday. So I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. And I will talk to you all on Tuesday. You all take care. Bye bye.